Hello there guys, it's Matsimus. Thank you for joining me today on this video. I really do appreciate it. So what are we talking about today? Well, as you can see, we are talking about the Ac-130 Gunship, and what an aircraft it is, guys. This is one of my favorites. Who doesn't love rotary cannons, big 105mm guns pointing out the side of a Hercules? I mean, I don't know, maybe you're just on the wrong channel, because I absolutely love it. I think it's a fantastic system. Now, if you don't know much about this aircraft, this isn't really going to be a video of an overview or a review of the aircraft, which I may potentially do in the future. It's more going to be discussing a little bit about why other countries are not utilizing these kinds of weapon systems. Honestly, guys, it's kind of surprising to me how effective this kind of system is and how many countries and forces around the world are not trying to adapt these kinds of principles into ground and /air combat, because at the end of the day, yes, it is primitive, yes, it is basically just shooting rounds out the side of an aircraft, but you've got to remember, guys, that in modern day conflicts nowadays, we're not fighting these high-tech, sophisticated enemies. We are fighting basically primitive armed forces, very low-tech armed forces that have very minimal anti-air defense and very minimal air superiority. Which means that the skies are kind of free reign, and with this thing being free reign in the skies, it gives a whole host of options and firepower. Now, this aircraft is primarily used by the United States Special Forces Command, which is really very important because they're going to be the guys that are going to be on their own. They're going to be the guys that are going to be in the heat of the shit if it goes down. I would always want to have one of these things covering my ass if I was going in as a four-man team, or a small team of whatever special forces that they are part of, and that's why they're utilized all the time by those teams as much as they can. Now, this aircraft has served very, very well, and unfortunately though, it's time for it to get an upgrade, and it is constantly getting upgrades, which is really nice to see. Now, the aircraft has been given a little bit of controversy in terms of its airframe lasting and not lasting, and the different recoil effects, and there's only so many rounds it can put through at different altitudes due to the structural integrity of the aircraft and the box wing and blah blah blah. That's a difficulty that the United States Air Force and the top brass are going to be a little concerned with, because they're always going to be looking at the cost effectiveness of this aircraft. Honestly, guys, from a military mindset and as from a soldier on the ground, I wouldn't give a shit. This thing seems to do the job absolutely fantastically, whether it be being able to designate targets or troops on the ground, or just lighting them up. This thing is really, really impressive. I mean, guys, let's be honest here. We're talking about a lot of firepower being able to be brought down onto an enemy force, and honestly, that is awesome. Now, there are a few different variants of this particular aircraft. We have the Ac-130H Spectre, which is comprising of one 40mm Bofors cannon, one 105mm M102 howitzer. There's also the Ac-130U Spooky, which comprises of one General Dynamics 25mm GAU-12 barreled Gatling cannon, which is, I think, the weapon system we're primarily used to seeing on these aircraft, along with, again, a 1x 40mm L60 Bofors cannon and 1x 105mm M102 howitzer. Finally, there is the Ac-130W Stinger 2 and the Ac-130J, which comprises of one 30mm ATK GAU-23 autocannon, the Gunslinger weapon system with a launch tube of AGMs of 176 variants, and Griffin missiles that can also be utilized with GBU-44 Viper strike munitions, which is basically bombs, guys, which gives this aircraft even more capability than the standard primitive munitions that they've been using with the 105 cannon, the 25mm cannon and such. We're actually able to get this aircraft a little higher, stop putting that strain on this, on the airframe, which the top brass are going to be a little upset at because they're going to have to replace things, repair things. They can actually just pound this thing in with a hell of a load of missiles and bombs and drop them from altitude, which again is going to negate the fact that this thing can then be used not in environments where, or can be used in environments where anti-air defense could be quite high, and that's a technicality that I'm not really going to touch base on because I know very little about SAM sites and all that sort of stuff. But it is an option to be able to drop more firepower down than just the standard munitions. Now, this brings me on to the constant question I get when I think about this aircraft is, why on earth are we not using this everywhere? Why is this not a weapon system that we're trying to utilize more? It just seems such a no-brainer, i.e., something that we should be doing. The Americans, I think, have got this right. They've got firepower down to a T. And when it comes to supporting small man teams, this kind of weapon system is just perfect. I mean, literally, you have people in the sky who can see targets 3 times as far away from you as on the ground, accurately, night and day, through any weather conditions. As an infantry soldier of any kind, special forces or regular, that is an asset that is a lifesaver and is going to pretty much protect you from any kind of threat. We're talking about rounds that can punch through the top of tanks. You know, we're not talking about weapon systems that can really defend against these kind of attacks, because tanks and small armoured personnel carriers, they just don't have the technology yet to be able to defend from such a massive firepower. And that's why I find it absolutely hilarious with this modern day environment that we're in now in terms of armed conflict, is we have these potential Cold War scenarios firing back up again. You know, these armoured columns, these big infantry movements, these tactically based strikes that could happen at any moment. You know, we want to have a quick reaction force available. Why on earth are we not producing more of these damn aircraft? Now, maybe the United States is not allowing us to transform, their aircraft to specific militaries around the world, and I kind of get that. Their aircraft, maybe they don't want to send it around the world. But that doesn't mean that our own countries cannot make their own types of this aircraft. We have very different chassis available that can be utilized for these kind of weapons. The Hercules doesn't have to be the only aircraft that can utilize these gun platforms. And that being said, why don't we design our own systems that are even better, more effective, and more resistant to these strains and, different technicalities that we're having problems with in the sky and potentially causing more money and blah, 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 blah. I think the thing I find most amusing about this situation, and why it always kind of makes me chuckle in the back of my mind about thinking about this particular aircraft being utilized by other countries, is we are so hooked on this. We're going to be fighting these high-tech weapon systems and all these new fighter jets we're producing and all these new anti-aircraft systems and blah, blah, blah. Guys, I'm not going to lie to you here. It's probably never ever going to happen that any of these high-tech weapon systems are going to be put against one another. Let's look at the F-22, for instance. How many instances has it seen air-to-air combat? I don't know off by heart, but I can guarantee it's not going to be more than how many I can count on my hands. How many times has this aircraft been used in combat? A lot. And very, very effectively. I honestly feel like money is being purged and taken from different projects to fill other projects that I find to just be completely redundant. This aircraft is doing the job it was asked to do all the time and will continue to be doing it for quite some time. And that's why I think the United States Air Force are pumping extra money into these aircraft, because they know that at the end of the day they're going to be having a lot more conflicts going on where this aircraft is applicable. It's not just combat though, guys. This aircraft has been updated currently with all sorts of different systems to allow it to do reconnaissance. For instance, I think the newer ones they have out now are actually able to use ISTAR systems, which is basically information, surveillance, target acquisition, and reconnaissance pods. So they basically stick a few of these things underneath. You can have a team of 6 guys in the back of the aircraft, can pretty much Google Maps an entire battlefield without even having to leave the comfort of their chair in the aircraft, which we know already happens on many other systems and many other aircraft out there. But when you have ISTAR with an aircraft that has the weapon systems to then engage straight away after, it just seems like the perfect combination for firepower and reconnaissance. You're literally being able to cover 2 bases at once, and I just think it's a really great idea. I just wish so much that other countries would try it. The United Kingdom, for instance, let's look at that. Okay, we have a lot of money pumped into the Apache Longbow, which is, hands down, let's not lie, one of the most amazing attack helicopters in the world. However, the Apache does need to get quite close to the enemy to be able to engage. It also has to be able to be in potential firing distance of small arms or, heavier machine gun fire from the ground. Now, that's sort of subjective depending on the environment you're working in. The Apache Longbow was originally designed as a tank buster, and now it's been utilized nowadays in more sort of an insurgency role. But the great thing about this aircraft is it is multi-role, which means it has the ability to take out that insurgency infantry and take out the tanks and pretty much be able to give full battle picture coverage for intelligence or commanders on the ground that may want to see more of the battlefield or be able to see more of a, a picture of what's going on with the reconnaissance element that this aircraft can provide also. Another fantastic feature of this aircraft is the ability to stay on station or on call for quite some time. Obviously, this aircraft can go into a holding pattern for quite a while and be able to provide that battle picture or ground support for quite a while, and that's a really handy feature to have too. We're talking about faster tech aircraft that have limited fuel capacity, are able to travel very, very quickly, but are not be able to stay on call for the troops on the ground for too long, and that's pretty much a big deal, guys, because if you want to have that air support, you're going to want to have it around for quite some time, not having to wait for the boys to fly back in for a refuel. The fact that this can stay on station for that long too also allows for more firepower, more support to be able to be given. A lot of ammunition in these things, guys. As you can see, the storage racks are able to hold a lot of ammo. The more ammo, the more firepower, and the more firepower, the more coverage, and that means that the troops on the ground are going to have a much better day. It also means the enemy troops on the ground are going to have a much worse day. But as you can see here, these guys are just pounding rounds through those guns, and that kind of firepower being fired at one time is just immense, and I love it. But let's just hope that these aircraft continue on for the future. Honestly, guys, I think this is one of those systems that we're going to see a lot more of in the future. I think they're going to be giving a lot more updates and updated sort of weapons that they're going to put on there. I do know for a fact that the Ac-130J, otherwise known as the Ghost Rider, will eventually be coming in. And apparently it's going to feature a 30mm cannon, which is going to be, really, really nice to have. However, it will no longer have the 105mm howitzer or the 40mm Bofor cannon or the 25mm Gatling gun. And yes, guys, the 105mm artillery cell was a lot more cheap than the small diameter bombs that they're thinking of putting on the pylons on the side of the aircraft. So, it's a weird compromise that they're coming to there. They're going to kind of take all the old primitive weapons out of the side of the aircraft, give it just the old 30mm, and then be done with it. And then lots of smaller munitions that they can drop from altitude, which is kind of sad because although, many of the traditional gunship fans, including those on the ground, that have been in awe of the ability of these things to just destroy the enemy with streams of hot death, are going to be really disappointed with the new Ac-130J configuration, as it's pretty much identical to that of the Ac-130W. And unfortunately, that's kind of a sad thing to see happen, because they're going to lose all that heavy firepower of the 105mm, and as I mentioned before, it's a lot cheaper to fire those rounds, so I'm not too sure where they're going with that. It's kind of a weird thing that they're doing there. But I do think that they're going to keep a number of those aircraft around. They're going to. There's just no point in scrapping the entire fleet of those older aircraft or those older configurations, because they still are being used very well today. I don't think bombs are the way forward all the time. We clearly see that just dropping bombs on targets doesn't always work. At least with a weapon system like this, we're getting live, accurate feedback to the gunner, who can actually see the rounds hitting on target. He can actually see his splash. Problem is, though, there's also the negative side of these kind of systems that are being used is poor aim. You may not be that accurate on that joystick, putting rounds on target. Wind, the angle of the aircraft, things just may not line up correctly, and things can go wrong with standard munitions like this that computers would normally calculate, but we are, at the end of the day, leaving it down to a hand-controlled joystick that is a gunner. He's basically utilizing all that firepower within the means of his training and his skill and ability, which it's a little scary, if you've got troops on the ground close in contact, but I don't have any doubts that these guys can't do their jobs properly. Let's be honest, we know they're going to be able to do their jobs properly without having to knock out their own troops. That wasn't the point I'm making. All I'm trying to say is there is that risk factor that, if we're putting munitions down through however many feet of altitude, traveling at speed, and the rounds are traveling at different trajectories and stuff, things could potentially go wrong. So that could be a reason as to why they're transitioning to more sort of bomb dropped munitions instead of just the standard old school rounds fired out the side of the aircraft. So I guess the moral of the story is here, guys, I want this system to continue on for many, many years to come, and I can see it happening. I really do think they're going to keep rolling with this. I think they're going to put more funding into these heavy-based platforms that can keep on station for quite some time and provide air support to the ground troops for a long period of time with just amazing firepower on call and on demand. The JTACs are always going to have this beautiful beast following them in the United States Special Forces Command, which I'm hoping in the near future the British and many other countries around the world will try and start utilising. Whether or not they will, well, that's subjective, and I guess we'll see in the near future here. It'll be nice to see what other kind of upgrades they put into these aircraft in the future, whether it be the reconnaissance pods or different variants of size of caliber for each round. But let me know what you guys think, guys. I'd love to know what you have, your opinion on this. You know, do you think this kind of system is redundant? Do you think it's something that should be replaced with something more high-tech? Or do you think we should stick with the whole primitive guns out the side of the aircraft and supporting the ground troops? Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your opinion on it. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. I really do appreciate it. If you did enjoy today's video, please leave a like. If you are new to my channel, please hit that subscribe button. And I hope to hear from you in the comment section below. Hope you have a wonderful day, guys. All the best, and bye-bye.